What is up, everyone? Welcome back to Historic Hot Laps for another episode, second episode of the year here. I'm glad you're here because this week's show is a full one, and honestly, it feels like one of those weeks that helps define the early shape of the season. We're coming off one of the biggest endurance races of the year, the Rolex 24 at Daytona, and there's a lot to unpack there. We had some strategy calls that paid off. We had some strategy calls that didn't. Late race drama that reminded everyone just how unforgiving endurance racing can be. A crazy, foggy caution, and a handful of early season storylines that are already beginning to stretch across the entire IMSA calendar. After that, we're going to dive into the latest motorsports news. Some of it is surprising, some of it is a bit messy, and some of it could honestly reshape how teams and drivers do business moving forward, not just this season, but for many years to come. Then to close out things here, we're going to slow it down and go deep into the history with one of the most remarkable careers in modern motorsport, a driver whose story includes elite-level success, a life-altering accident, and one of the most impressive comebacks racing has ever seen. We're talking about Robert Kubica. So settle in. There's a lot to cover. Let's get right into it. Let's kick things off with a full recap of the weekend at the 64th Rolex 24 at Daytona, the season-opening race for the 2026 IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship season. Right from the start, Daytona delivered a mix of speed, strategy, chaos, and heartbreak that has made this event pretty legendary. And this year's running may go down as one of the most action-packed in recent memory. In the GTP, which is the Grand Touring Prototype class, the fastest and most iconic category of the race, Porsche Penske Motorsports once again showed why they're the team to beat. Felipe Nasr, Julian Adler, and Lauren Henrik drove the number 7 Porsche 963 to victory, holding off a late charge from Jack Aiken in the number 31 Cadillac Whelen Cadillac. Nasr crossed the line just 1.5 seconds ahead after 24 hours of racing. That mark secured the team its third consecutive Daytona 24 victory, matching a historic streak and tying names like Helio Castroneves and Peter Gregg in consecutive wins there. Behind them was Aiken and a Cadillac effort that came so close to ending Porsche's run. Rounding out the overall podium was the number 24 Team WRT BMW, proving the midfield manufacturers are still knocking on the door for that prototype glory. In LMP2, the number 4 CrowdStrike Racing APR Orca took the class win with drivers George Kurtz, Alex Quinn, Toby Sowery, and Mouth Jacobson, showing excellent pace throughout the race. In the GTD Pro category, Paul Miller Racing with Connor DeFilippi, Max Hesse, Dan Harper, and Neil Verheen brought home a class victory in the number 1 BMW M4 GT3 Evo. And in GTD class, it was Winward's Racing's number 57 Mercedes AMG, led by Philip Ellis, Russell Ward, Indy Dante, and Lucas Aurur. That GTD battle went right down to the final laps and featured some serious wheel-to-wheel contact late in the day. This year's race also saw a record crowd at Daytona International Speedway, with attendance figurings topping anything the event has seen in years. But it wasn't just the fans that made the story. Mother Nature and the track played parts in the story as well. A prolonged caution period, the longest in Rolex 24 history to be exact, stretched for over 6 hours, neutralizing large chunks of the race and forcing teams to rethink their strategy on the fly in conditions that often flip the script on pit timing and tire wear. The fog-related caution changed the complexion of the race for several contenders, particularly the accurate entries, but we'll get to that here in a moment. Let's talk about one of the coolest narratives of the weekend. It wasn't just the prototypes, it was the IndyCar contingent in the paddock, proving just how interconnected our sport has become. Daytona always attracts talent across motorsport, but 2026 took it to another level. Full-time IndyCar drivers like Scott Dixon and Alex Palou lined up in the GTP class with Acura and Meyer-Shank Racing. And while they didn't quite reach the podium, they left a strong impression. The number 93 Acura with Palou, Ranger Van Zerdante, Nick Gioli, and Super Formula standout Kakuota, I believe is how you pronounce it. They started on pole and led laps early before setbacks dropped them back. They fought back to finish 5th overall and showed grit in highly competitive field. That's a super hard class to be in. Dixon's sister Acura entry alongside AJ Allmendinger, Go Dinger, Tom Blomqvist, and Colin Braun faced its own challenges and ultimately finished 9th. But the fact that multiple IndyCar champions and Indy 500 winners were mixing it up at Daytona is itself a highlight. The crossover wasn't limited to just GTP. We saw IndyCar competitors everywhere, from Colton Herta running in a prototype competition to Will Power making his Rolex 24 debut in GTD Pro, where he scored a class podium in the number 75 Mercedes AMG, a fantastic result for Power's first IMSA start. Other drivers with ties to open wheel racing, NASCAR, and Formula One also appeared on the entry list and in the paddock, giving Daytona a truly international all-star vibe that only this race can truly pull off. Across all classes, what stood out this year was resilience, from teams dodging long cautions to factory prototypers fending off hungry challengers and crossover stars proving they can compete anywhere. The Rolex 24 reminded us why endurance racing still sits near the heart of global motorsport. It rewards speed and patience, execution and adaptability. And with the performances from Porsche's repeat victory to the strong runs from Palou, Dixon, Power, and others, Daytona once again sets the tone for an exciting season ahead. All right, let's talk some Formula One testing because things are already heating up ahead of the 2026 season. The first big shakedown sessions at Barcelona have given us a peek at how teams are shaping up, and it's a mix of promise, some setbacks, and some behind-the-scenes headaches. Red Bull are now developing their own engine in partnership with Ford. They were out on track early and logged solid mileage, and that's a big deal because adapting to a completely new power unit while refining aero on brand new chassis is no small task. However, things did get a bit dramatic when Isaac Hadjar crashed the car in wet conditions, damaging the Red Bull and forcing the team to reassess whether they'd continue immediately or scale back a session or two to fix and avoid further issues. Thankfully, the driver was unhurt. Red Bull isn't trying to show all their cards like every team. Times aren't public, but reliability this early matters, especially with a new engine. Trouble now could be early season growing pains, but it's certainly something they need to keep their eye on. Ferrari has also been running a new SF26 and managed a healthy amount of laps despite changeable conditions on Tuesday. Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton shared the duties of testing, and running both wet and dry conditions has helped them gather good baseline data across a range of grip levels, which is exactly what you want at this stage. They seem comfortable and collected, reasonable mileage on it, no headline-grabbing drama, just methodical work going over there at Ferrari. It's exactly what the team under new regs needs right now, so that's a pretty standout from these testing procedures, I guess, with the new chassis. Mercedes also reportedly tallied strong laps in the test. While they haven't released wild performance claims, their running has been steady and consistent, exactly what you want in a new regulation cycle. Teams like Mercedes put a premium on hitting target laps rather than topping timesheets in the testing process. So we're talking reliability over speed at this test. Haas might not grab headlines like Ferrari or Red Bull, but they've been one of the more interesting midfield stories at Barcelona. Team principal Komatsu admitted they uncovered problems every lap, but they're learning what they need to solve. That's exactly what testing is for. The goal isn't to be fast. It's to understand every quirk of your car's behavior before the real pressure starts, right? Now for the real story. Williams is not running at Barcelona at all, and that is huge. More stuff for Williams, right? They confirmed they won't turn a wheel this week because their new car's development is behind schedule, and reports suggest multiple failed FIA crash tests have played a major role in that delay. Missing out on Barcelona testing is the last thing a team wants. With major rule changes in play, every lap on a new car is critical for learning reliability, balance, and component behavior. Missing 3 days of this could leave Williams significantly behind their competitors going into Bahrain. Williams wasn't the only team posting delays, though. Aston Martin also missed the first couple of days with their AMR 26, not ready until late in the week. That limits their window to gather data, and while still expected to run before the weekend wraps up, it's less than ideal for drivers like Fernando Alonso or Lance Stroll preparing to extract performance out of the car. Other teams like Alpine, the Racing Bulls, Audi, and the new Cadillac squad have been out there logging laps, gathering baseline telemetry, and chasing understandings rather than headlines. Cadillac in particular, new to this environment, they've got a lot to learn, and testing is the key for their debut year. So let's be clear on this. Testing is not about who's fastest. We still won't see real lap times until the Bahrain tests, where timings are released and the sandbagging truly ends. What we're seeing this week is reliability trends like Red Bull's crash, Haas's bugs, teams are shaking out mechanical and aero puzzles, preparation gaps. Williams and Aston Martin already made on the back foot of terms of mileage logged, which is not good for their teams or their drivers. And then basic data gathering, right? Ferrari and Mercedes are methodically building baseline performance understanding on the new chassis with the new regulations. So while Barcelona might not give us a pecking order, it gives us a clear picture of who might hit the ground running and who still has to sprint to get ready. Those teams that were behind schedule already. Not a good look for 2026 for them. And unfortunately, it's a lot of the names we expected. So let's shift some gears here. Let's take a broader look at some other stories from across motorsports right now. First one to talk about is PREMA and their IndyCar trouble. One of the most talked about stories is PREMA Racing and the growing expectation that they may miss the opening portion of the 2026 IndyCar season. This is significant, and not just because of PREMA's reputation. PREMA is one of the most successful junior Formula teams in the world. Their trophy cabinet speaks for itself, but IndyCar is not a simple extension of European single-seater driving. It's a fundamentally different challenge, and so far the transition has proven more complicated than expected. This doesn't appear to be about talent or effort. It's more about the logistics, the staffing, infrastructure, and understanding the sheer complexity of IndyCar operations. Oval preparation alone represents a steep learning curve, and it becomes clear why this is such a demanding step. Missing early races would be a major setback. IndyCar doesn't wait, and the competitive field offers no grace period. Starting behind immediately puts pressure on the rest of the season. So here's my opinion on this. The situation doesn't mean PREMA is destined to fail in IndyCar, but it does mean expectations need to be recalibrated. Success isn't guaranteed simply because you dominate elsewhere in the motorsport world, right? IndyCar has humbled well-funded, well-respected teams time and time again. It's kind of the no man's land of open-wheel racing when you get all these European-style mindsets coming over. If PREMA commits to long-term, invests correctly, and treats this as a multi-year learning process, they can still become competitive. But this is a reminder that reputation alone doesn't buy results. We saw how good they could do during qualifying at Indy this last year with getting the pole position, which is huge. That's a huge thing on the biggest, most complicated oval in the world with the speeds no other racing group has seen. But that's kind of where it ends, right? They unraveled quickly during the race. We know there's financial issues there. I want to see teams be successful in IndyCar. I want to grow the paddock, but honestly, I feel like the writing's on the wall here. Rumor is they're not going to start till Long Beach, which is 4 races in. I mean, it's not a big season anyway. It's not a NASCAR 36 race season. You're going to miss out on, 25% of the season right out of the gate. So, I don't know. Kind of interesting. Next, let's talk about Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing. They've added Chase Briscoe to their driving coaching staff. This is one of those moves that might not generate headlines immediately, but could have real impact over that organization. Briscoe brings experience from NASCAR's highest level and understanding of modern driver development and firsthand knowledge of adapting quickly to different environments. That adaptability is valuable, especially in a series as nuanced as IndyCar. For RLL, this looks like an investment in communication and confidence. Driver coaching isn't just about raw lap time, though. It's about translating feel into feedback, managing pressure situations, and building consistency across the season. This is definitely for younger drivers or those who still search for some stability. This kind of support can be the difference between plateauing and progressing in the sport. And let's mention as well that this was a staff member from PREMA last year. So already guys are jumping ship, even on the consulting side of things. So keep that in mind. Next thing, Abel Motorsports will begin the Indy NXT season under a penalty, which is never an ideal way to start the year. Indy NXT is fiercely competitive, and any disadvantage before the opening race immediately puts a team on a defensive. Development margins are small, and points lost early can haunt you later. Penalties are also going to test their culture over there. How a group responds will say a lot about their long-term goal here. Do the mistakes compound, or does the team tighten execution and minimize the damage? If Abel can remain focused and disciplined, recovery is definitely possible, but there's no question this already makes a demanding championship even tougher from a team that's had a lot of ups and downs over the years. So be real interesting to see how that goes. All right, let's talk about one of the bigger stories in the off-track world right now, and that's a long-running legal battle between McLaren Racing and IndyCar champion Alex Palou. A dispute that finally reached a conclusion in a London courtroom earlier this year. The saga has been unfolding for over 2 years. It's one of the most complex contract disputes in recent motorsports history. It touches on driver agreements, cross-series opportunities, and the real financial impact a top driver can have on a team's plans. We've covered this in the past, but let's do a little backstory. So back in 2022, Alex Palou, 4-time NTT IndyCar Series champion, signed a contract with McLaren. which was planning to field an IndyCar operation separate from its Formula One team. This agreement was that he would join McLaren's IndyCar program starting in 2024. At the same time, there was an implied path to Formula One involvement, including reserve driving duties and a possibility of stepping into an F1 seat, something Palou has publicly said was part of his motivation in signing this contract. But later that year, McLaren announced Oscar Piastri as one of its Formula One race drivers, leaving Palou's F1 hopes with the team in question. Palou ultimately chose to remain with Chip Ganassi Racing in IndyCar rather than move to McLaren as originally planned. McLaren said this constituted a breach of contract because Palou had legally committed to drive for the team. They argued that the unexpected change caused the team financial losses, including lost sponsorship, increased driver salary costs, and lost performance-related revenue, and filed suit seeking roughly $20 million or more in damages. After months of evidence and testimony, the case heard in the UK High Court in London, both McLaren CEO Zak Brown and Palou gave evidence as part of the proceedings, and about a week ago, the judge delivered a ruling. McLaren won the court claim that Palou breached the contract. Palou was ordered to pay approximately $12 million in damages to McLaren. The damages awarded were based on quantifiable losses in the IndyCar context, including lost sponsorship and increased costs, rather than the full amount McLaren originally sought out. While McLaren initially sought more than $20 million, the final award landed closer to the $12 million mark after the judge evaluated actual losses tied to Palou's change of plans. Palou and his legal team have stated that they are disappointed with the verdict and argue the claims against them were overblown, maintaining that McLaren did not suffer losses he believes would justify the entire award. So this isn't just about one contract. It sends a strong signal with written agreements immensely matter in motorsports, right? Everything's under a contract in motorsport, perhaps more than ever as drivers and teams pursue cross-series opportunities. This is going to affect their thinking moving forward. Teams will be more precise, especially when contracts touch on future opportunities like F1 seats and reserve roles. Drivers need to be cautious. Backing out of a signed agreement isn't just negotiation risk. It can carry some real financial consequences, as we've seen. $12 million is nothing to laugh about. Sponsors and partners also care in this. The judge took into account how lost star power impacted McLaren's commercial deals, showing that what happens off the track affects the bottom line. So Palou's focus remains on his IndyCar career, where he's been one of the top competitors for years now, and his team over there at Chip Ganassi Racing has publicly supported him throughout. McLaren, meanwhile, reiterated that strong contracts are foundational to its operation, and ruling underscores the importance of clear, enforceable terms, especially as teams increasingly operate across open-wheel disciplines. The case is already shaping how future driver deals might be written, negotiated, and enforced, and that's news every seat grabber and team manager should be paying attention to. So we'll see how this affects things moving forward, right? Moving into the future, it's hard to say, but I feel like between this and the 2311 lawsuit and the charter deals and all that stuff, the legal side of motorsports is getting pretty thick. All right, for this week's history segment, we're telling the story of Robert Kubica, and the best way to understand his career is to look at both the numbers and what happened around them, because Kubica's story isn't just about what he achieved, it's about when he achieved it, how he achieved it, and what he came back from. So Robert Kubica was born in Poland, and from an early age, it was clear he had something special. He moved to Italy as a teenager to pursue racing, a massive commitment that separated him from his family and his culture at a very young age. His junior career was impressive across the board. He won the Formula Renault 2000 Euro Cup, then went on to become the 2005 Formula 3 Euro Series champion, beating future Formula 1 regulars along the way. That success earned him a place in the GP2 series, where he won races immediately and caught the attention of BMW Sauber. Kubica made his Formula 1 debut in 2006 and competed across multiple seasons with BMW, Sauber, Renault, and later in Williams. So here are his key stats. So he's got 99 Formula 1 starts, 1 win, 12 podiums, championship best finish 2008 when he was 4th overall in the points championship. and he was the first Polish driver to win a Formula One Grand Prix. That single win came at the 2008 Canadian Grand Prix, but calling it just one win completely undersells the significance of it. 1 year before that victory, Robert suffered one of the most violent crashes in modern F1 history at that exact same circuit. His BMW Sauber hit the wall at high speed, disintegrated, and left him with injuries and forced him to miss the next race. To come back 1 year later and win at Montreal was one of the most emotionally powerful moments in Formula One over that whole decade. That victory put Robert into the championship lead midway through the 2008 season, led the Formula One World Championship. Yes, one win got him to lead the championship. BMW Sauber had built a genuinely competitive car, and Robert's consistency was remarkable. He finished on the podium in races where others made mistakes. He maximized results when outright wins weren't available. Ultimately, BMW made the decision to shift development focus to the 2009 car early, which cost Kubica a real shot at the title. By season's end, he finished fourth in the standings, just 23 points behind the champion. It remains one of the biggest what-if seasons in modern F1 history. So let's talk about what made Robert so special. He was never the flashiest driver on the grid, but among engineers he had an elite reputation. He was known for exceptionally precise technical feedback, strongest tire management anyone had seen, and an ability to extract pace from very difficult cars. Multiple engineers have said he could feel the setup changes that others miss. BMW often relied on him heavily during development phases, which is a big reason the team progressed as quickly as it did in the late 2000s. So moving away from Formula One, Robert also had a passion for rally, and there was a moment that came in 2011 that changed everything. While competing at the Ronde di Andorra rally in Italy, Robert suffered a catastrophic accident. The car left the road, struck a barrier, causing severe injuries to his right arm, shoulder, and leg. At one point, doctors were unsure if he would regain full use of his hand. For a Formula One driver, that honestly should have been the end. What followed was one of the most remarkable comebacks in motorsports history. Robert returned to competition in rallying and incredibly won the 2013 WRC2 championship, proving he could still compete and win at a world-class level. Later, he transitioned into endurance racing, adapting to prototypes and long stints with limited physical mobility in his right arm. And then came another milestone. In 2023, Robert won the 24 Hours of Le Mans in the LMP2 class. That victory alone would define most careers. For Robert, though, it was proof that his talent had survived everything. He also returned to Formula One in 2019 with Williams, becoming one of the very few drivers in history to race again in F1 after injuries of that magnitude. While the results weren't competitive, the achievement itself was extraordinary. Robert will never be remembered as a world champion, but his legacy goes far beyond titles. He is remembered as one of the most naturally gifted drivers of his generation, a driver who led a Formula One championship, a Grand Prix winner, the very first one from Poland, a Le Mans class winner, and one of the toughest competitors motorsport has ever seen. Robert belongs in the same conversation as drivers like Niki Lauda and Alex Zanardi, not because of identical careers, but because of shared resilience. His story is proof that motorsports history isn't just about trophies, it's about perseverance, adaptability, and refusing to let any one moment define everything that comes after that. And that's why Robert's name still matters today, and he's still active. And that's what's super amazing about the whole thing, right? Not only did he do all this stuff over the last 20 to 30 years of his career, but he's still going. He's still got it done, and just incredible. I'm kind of speechless, honestly, of everything he's accomplished. If you're ever killing time on the internet, watch back some of his old races and some of the moves he made in Formula One, that win in Montreal, all that stuff. The guy is pure skill back when cars were even harder to fight than they are now. Just, yeah. Thank you, Robert, for still being involved, everything you've done for the sport. Salute you as motorsports history legend. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Before we wrap all this up, though, let's look ahead at what's coming next. We've got some early season momentum beginning to form across multiple series, with storylines developing quickly in both sports car racing and the open wheel ladder. The competitive picture is starting to sharpen. The intensity is going to rise from here. Next week on Historic Hot Laps, we'll be back with more news, more analysis, another deep dive into racing history. We've got the Clash for NASCAR coming up. If the snow allows it, we'll be covering all that stuff. And yeah, I mean, we say it every time, but if you guys want a specific topic or something like that, hit us up on any of the socials. We'll give you a shout out. We'll cover the topic. We'll do the research. Anything you want to hear about, let us know. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on what's next. And follow us on all the socials too. Like I said, we're on Insta, Twitter /X. I guess I should probably start calling it the right name. TikTok, I don't know, all the stuff. We're available Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the other ones out there. And that's about all I got today, I guess. Appreciate it. As always, thanks for listening. Stay safe. Thanks for tuning in.